Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and the vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who also is the host of his own show, Irrational Egoists.
It's true. The rumors are true.
And how are those rumors treating you? Are they treating you well? Are they getting you
They are. There's a great episode out right now where Andy Bernstein, he read my book, View from a Cage, and he wanted to interview me about some of the things in the book. So Andy and I did that yesterday, and the episode is out already, and I highly recommend it.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. I have to read your book. It's in my queue.
Oh, my God. I've been hearing about this for like 5 years, how it's in this queue.
The problem is I keep getting book recommendations that make the queue bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm prioritizing those books, and I shouldn't before yours because you're my partner.
I am. You know, it's interesting because I actually, speaking of books, I've read a couple of Andy's books, and he and I made an agreement. He asked me to read this, his novel Reckoning, and I said, okay, but if you read my book. So we made the deal. Now he breezed through my book, but because I'm always reading articles that I got to get to you, I don't have as much time to read books.
Yeah.
I'm 135 pages into this book, and now I just got an interview with somebody that I'm interviewing her about a book that she wrote. So now I've got to read that book. Now, some guys, when they do interviews, they don't read the book of the person; they just do the interview. But I actually like to read the book. Leah, if you're going to say that I'm Mark's boyfriend, you have to put the possessive in boyfriends. You have to put the apostrophe after the D.
It's just a typing error. Yeah, so I started reading Andy's book, the latest one, the thriller, the detective one, but I had to stop.
Red Meat Village.
Red Meat Village. I had to stop after a section of it only because I hated the eubonics and I hated the one character. But I'm willing to start from scratch and redo the book again. I'm just going, it's literally on my bed. So it will be a book that I will check out, unfortunately, before yours, because I need to read some fiction. I'm actually reading Mexican Gothic right now as a fiction. I just finished Phantom of the Opera, which was hilarious. It's actually a funny book. I recommend it for anybody. It's supposed to be Gothic horror, but it's actually
Gothic horror.
Not a Gothic whore. Get your mind out of the gutter. Gothic horror. Okay.
I prefer Gothic horrors. I'm sorry.
I'm sure you do, as do I. Anyway, folks, I want to first say our disclaimer that anything we do and say here is not a reflection of the American Capitalist Party. It is our own opinions, but usually they come awfully close to what the Capitalist Party endorses because we are capitalists, pure and simple. That means principled individualists. And we want to bring you all on board. So remember to like us, hit the like and subscribe button. Remember to share on YouTube so that this message gets around to lots of people because, there's statists, communists, all sorts of folks out there that would rather take your moral agency from you and continue along the same path that we've been going on for the past 125 years. But we want to change that. We are tired of it. We want to be the kings of our own castles, and I'm sure you do as well. So why don't we start with the first article? Speaking of king of our own castle.
I just want to tell you, we've started a trend here in the audience. The women are now coming out identifying as Gothic whores. So great job.
I want to see T-shirts at
yes, Gothic whore. Yes,
whore. We will know what that means, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm sure it'll incite questions from other people at the conventions, and maybe it could become viral.
Nice.
Maybe we can even put it in our merch, in the American Capitalist Party merch. It has no relationship to capitalism at all, but hey, that's
Gothic whores prosper most under capitalism. There is no system under which Gothic whores can do better, can flourish more than under capitalism.
Might I say
that to the bank?
Might I say that every school of horror can prosper under the
That's
capital?
True. That's true.
This is not, by the way, a official part of the American Capitalist Party platform. It is simply our opinions. I just want you to know that. Enough with this talking of whores. Let's get down to the TSA, the wonderful TSA established by George Bush after the 9/11 attacks to make us safer, has of course increased lines at airports, added 2.5 hours to your travel time, made your life inconvenient, on top of the fact that most of the personnel who work for the TSA are sort of dickheads. This is not an official position of the American Capitalist Party. This is my own experience, except my own experience is slightly altered because it just so happens that quite a number of the TSA employees also happen to be fans of Supernatural. So I do get special treatment sometimes going through. In addition to having a 19-year-old dog, which always works on the heartstrings of the worst human beings on the planet, it even softens the heartstrings of TSA employees, so they tend to treat me a little bit better than they do most. But the service is generally known to be very bad, which is why the American Capitalist Party, and I am speaking for the American Capitalist Party right now, would endorse privatization of airports and private security doing that work because it has been demonstrated. And I'm sure we can get Ariana, our esteemed secretary, to show you all the statistical evidence that private security works much better at catching bad guys, and it's much more efficient too, for various reasons that we won't discuss here because it'll become an entire conversation that we don't have to have. But the TSA has done something interesting. It's responded to its new technology, and now we don't have to take off our shoes when we are going to the airport. Now, I find this a very nice thing, Michael, because I've taken to wearing my slippers when I go to the airport now, slippers that I use, that I walk into jiu-jitsu with. I get constantly made fun of, by the way, at the academy for my slippers. But I also wear them to the airport, so I can just let them fall off. And, I don't have to, there's no muss, no fuss. I don't have to bend down, tie shoes, untie shoes, do any of that. But my slippers are super uncomfortable to walk around in an airport with. So I am personally relieved that I no longer have to do that. And at some airports, I don't even have to take out my computer. And I don't know why I have to not take out my computer at some airports, but at other airports, I do have to take out my computer. A full-on pain in the ass. But are you happy about this new adjustment? Now, it's not a perfect capitalist adjustment. We want privatization of airports. We want private security because it's much better and more efficient. But what's the problem? You sent me this article for a reason.
So I did, because I'm happy that we're moving towards liberty. Now, it doesn't affect me quite as much as it affects you because I can't afford to fly around the world on a whim. So I don't fly quite as much as you. I don't have to come up with a policy with the slippers, and the TSA agents all know you by name and whatever. But I do like the fact that they've gotten away with this, or done away with this policy. I flew recently, and it was horrible. Now, I've never flown under the old way, so to me it was okay, but it was just ridiculous. Like, take your computer out, do this, get the hell out of here. I remember when this first came about after 9/11, and I was just like, why are we increasing the size of government? And even back then, it occurred to me, if it was all privatized, this would not be an issue because you would just choose to go to the airport that, provided you with the service that you want. If you wanted to go to the place that makes you do strip searches or whatever, then that's where you'd go to. You know what I mean? So I'm very, very pleased with this. I know it's just a one-off. It's not some move toward greater liberty, but any victory for liberty is a good thing, and I think that this is a victory.
I agree with you. Lee says she's scared of planes. Lee, that is an irrational fear. You should be scared of walking across the street, especially in the UK. Far more casualties happen that way than in planes. I just want you to know, this is what pilots say. Now, wait, don't interrupt me here, Michael. Don't rain on my parade, because pilots tell me this, and I believe pilots. They're not trying to assuage my irrational fear of flying. They actually say planes want to fly. Now, that is true. They are designed to fly. Thank God that human beings understand this thing called physics, because they design these things so that they want to fly. And if anything happens, if an accident does happen, multiple things have to go wrong simultaneously. In other words, there has to be a catastrophic failure across multiple levels of operation for a plane to crash because there are lots of redundancies, and the pilots are usually highly trained, unless you're on United, in which case their hiring practices were DEI practices. Then I would be a little bit skeptical. But I don't fly United. I never will fly United if I can help it. This is not a non-endorsement from the American Capitalist Party. This is my own personal opinion, by the way. I hate United and American Airlines. Me likey Delta. That's all I have to say. Now, what were you going to say, Michael?
I just found it rich. Yeah, no, I do think it's an irrational fear. I just found it rich to hear you to criticize somebody for irrational fears. That's all.
Because of Annabelle?
Yeah, because you were afraid.
Irrational fear. Annabelle is a possessed doll.
Yeah, that's not irrational.
Possessed by the frickin' devil.
Yeah, afraid of a Raggedy Ann doll, and you're going to lecture somebody. But, in all seriousness,
I'm afraid of clowns, too. And I think every person in this chat can understand that fear is completely rational.
No, I'll tell you what, though. What I was afraid of flying isn't a crash. That never even occurred to me. It doesn't scare me at all. But I do get panic attacks. And my fear was that, up at however many thousands of feet, I would get a panic attack. And that would really suck.
I can
get a panic attack.
I can help you with that, by the way.
Yeah, you could choke me out. But
no. Do you already have a method for dealing with panic attacks? Now let's
I haven't honestly had a panic attack in a very, very long time. When I used to get them, I didn't know what they were. So I would be terrified every time. I'm dying. Something's wrong with my heart. I'm going to pass out. Maybe I got a brain tumor. Once I found out what they were, they became far more easy to deal with because I didn't have the additional fear going on in my head. You know what I mean? About, dying or whatever. So box breathing and Klonopin. Ashley, it's very interesting you said that because my strategy actually was I was going to take Xanax in case I, flipped out. And I actually did an episode of The Rational Egoist with Jean Maroney, a brilliant, brilliant woman. And she took me through the whole thought process during the episode about how to deal with this, the fear. And it was really good. And what I ended up doing was I had the Xanax. I never took it. But I really, just knowing that it was there helped.
Can I tell you something?
Of course you can tell me something.
Well, it's not a foregone conclusion that I can tell you something. You might not want to hear this. So I discovered I used to have panic attacks as well. I even had a dissociative episode. Did you know what that is? Yeah, that was terrible. That's one of the most frightening things that has ever happened to me. Anybody in the chat who wants to tell me if they've had a dissociative episode where you suddenly feel like you are not real, like the things around you're not part of this planet. It's a very bizarre feeling. I was under an extreme amount of stress at the time that it happened, so I'm sure it was a stress response. And of course that brought on anxiety because you're feeling like you're losing control of your consciousness. And as Ayn Rand has discussed, there can be no more frightening thing in the world than the loss of control of your consciousness. I discovered something though in my anxiety with my anxiety trips, and that was that nothing like grounding or any of the techniques that people taught me to take the attention off of my attack and put it onto something real and material really helped me. You know what helped me?
If you tell me mushrooms, we're going to have a problem.
No, not mushrooms. Although those are probably an interesting factor that you could explore. But we'll talk about that at some other point. No, leaning into it. I found this. That a lot of the pain and fear that comes from an anxiety attack, it builds because it's so frightening. You want to evade the feeling. You want to push. Mm-hmm. So it's like, let's say you see a big, huge face of a wave coming at you. And it's such an enormous wave. You're like, wow, that's scary. I got to get the hell out of here. And you start swimming away from it. Of course,
fight or flight, yeah.
Only to be pulled into the wave and to be hit at the worst possible moment by the wave when it crests and crashes on top of you. The best response is to lean into it, to ask your body, what are you trying to tell me? There's some information that's in my body right now at a subconscious level that wants to come out, that I'm somehow repressing. and I need to know what that is. So I lean into it. I actually ask my body, what is it you're trying to tell me, please? And almost instantaneously and 100% of the time, the anxiety goes away because I'm not resisting it. I'm actually embracing it and asking it for information. And invariably, it tells me that information as well. If I were you, swim towards the wave, dive under it and into it, and you will be much better off.
Did you get that idea from Viktor Frankl by any chance?
It could be because I read Man's Search for Meaning, and he had a couple of ways of dealing with anxiety in his logotherapy. He had paradoxical intention, which
that's what I was getting at, because that's what that sounds like to me. It's like if you can't sleep, you keep trying to sleep and you won't be able to. But if you then try to stay awake instead,
yes.
You'll fall asleep. That's what that reminded me of.
You'll notice that when you try to stay awake, and his thing was give yourself a task every 15 minutes that you have to do because you have to stay awake for it. And then when you try to do that, you'll find that you can't anymore get up to do the task. It's also like acting. If you're trying to push for an emotion in acting, you'll never, ever find that emotion. If you're going for a result in acting, you more often than not, unless you're a sociopath, you will never find that emotion. It's in your absorption in what you're doing where emotions will flow out of you, and they'll flow out of you quite unpredictably. And that's the beautiful thing about really, really good acting is it's surprising to the actor, and it's surprising to the audience member as well because it's so spontaneous. But anyway, this talk of the TSA has led us into a completely different direction that I think is helpful nonetheless for our audience members to know that all of us, or many of us, have to deal with anxiety on a certain level. And you don't always have to deal with it with drugs, although I like your concept that knowing that you had a safety net, knowing that you had the Xanax there in case something should happen, automatically relieved you of the tension, right? And yeah.
And also what she helped me with was, because I had this sort of loop going on in my head where because I don't want to be taking drugs. So I'm just thinking, oh, if I end up doing it, I'll be horrible. That'll mean I'm weak, and she helped me to break that whole process. It was really great. I highly recommend that episode. The last interview I did with Gene Maroney, it was right before I went to San Diego. So it'd have to be in this past January 2025. Highly recommend it.
Maybe you can post that. I wanted to go back.
Thanks for the assignment, because that's what I need more of to lessen my anxiety. More assignments.
Well, and look, I wanted to say something about what Ariana said with respect to the article that we just read, and it had something to do with being felt up by the TSA. I have been felt up by the TSA. I've been arbitrarily searched. And for a while, it was happening every time I traveled. Like you've been now arbitrarily pinned for a search, and the search is very thorough, and they do not hesitate to touch your genitalia, which is disturbing to me. To be honest with you, it's disturbing to me. They go everywhere. I felt undressed. I felt abused, and I don't know why I was tracked. I have no criminal record to speak of. I'm not a terrorist, for crying out loud. Why I was arbitrarily chosen, I don't know, and I don't think arbitrarily choosing people necessarily makes the bad guys think, "Oops, that's scary. Maybe I should not bring a bomb on board." Enough of this talk. Let's go to ICE is accused of racially profiling in detentions of Latino and U.S. citizens. Now, first of all, I want to ask you a question, Michael.
Okay.
Do you think in general law enforcement, just law enforcement in general, not ICE, that racial profiling is good?
Wow. This is a tough question, both in regard to general law enforcement and specifically the ICE thing. And the reason I find it interesting is because it's very possible that there's racial profiling going on, but it's also possible that a bunch of, race baiters are claiming racial profiling's going on. So it's very difficult to know the truth of the situation. What I think about racial profiling, I think that if we were to get rid of some of the war on drugs, for instance, that would largely do away with racial profiling. The problem is minorities, because really it's not minorities, it's the poor, tend to be street drug dealers more than the wealthy. And minorities tend, not all minorities, but blacks and Hispanics tend to have higher poverty levels. They're more likely to be selling narcotics or carrying narcotics. So in that context, it makes sense to pull them over, right? To profile them. If you get rid of the unjust laws, then you would largely take away the need to racial profile. I shouldn't say need, but even if it were an effective method, I would still be against it. I don't think that the police should be targeting people based on race, because ultimately people are individuals. And there certainly are situations, if it's an ideology, for instance, that you're targeting, that's not the same thing as targeting an ethnicity or a race. But it might make sense to profile, for instance, Wahhabi Muslims. That makes sense because their ideology is bad, or white supremacists. But that's not the same as targeting white people or, say Arabs. Jim Valiant said the problem of the rich goes largely untouched. The drug problem of the rich goes largely untouched by law. Yeah, Jim, that's very true. But I once read an article by Walter Williams, who you referenced, I think, the other day when you took some time out to join the show. But the other day when you talked about Walter Williams, and he actually had a great essay about racial profiling. And he talked about, if we were to get rid of draconian drug laws, get rid of restrictions on firearms, you would largely do away with the excuse for racial profiling. And I think he's right. So that's my long-winded answer of saying that I think that racial profiling could be effective in some circumstances, but I still don't think it's just.
Yeah. So again, this is not the position of the American Capitalist Party. This is Michael.
Okay, okay. We say it at the beginning of the show. You're driving me nuts now.
Hey, I feel like playing. Let me play. Let me play with my food.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to agree with you in the sense that when you're dealing with a certain ideology, let's say Muslim extremists who are murdering people en masse, then it is perfectly acceptable to profile Muslims under those circumstances. Because you have no information. You don't know their biography. All you know is that the crimes that they're committing, and you have to go by that information. And then, unfortunately, it sort of reverses the they have to be proven guilty. Instead, you're sort of treating them as if they are guilty from the get-go. But in that respect, you're right. It's the ideology, it's the ideas that they're holding that you need to actually profile. Otherwise, it's sort of a nonsensical metric. And if they did get rid of these onerous laws that are, in my view, unconstitutional, irrational, and create violence, we wouldn't need these profilings to begin with. And speaking of unconstitutional and irrational, we have ICE now attacking.
Well, hold on. I want to address something that Ian Gilmore says, because he says that Muslim isn't a race. No, I know, Ian. That's why at the beginning I was differentiating between what would be collectivism and denying people of free will if you're doing it by race or ethnicity. But when you're doing it based on ideology, it's baked in. That's not collectivism, because you're specifically going by the beliefs of the people that you're profiling.
And El Al does it for their airlines, and they certainly avoid lots and lots of troubles. I don't think anybody will be able to smuggle a bomb on board an El Al airplane. I've been through the rigorous questioning process. It was actually a little bit offensive to me, to be honest with you, because it was about 20 minutes long. And I didn't fit any of the profiles that I thought were worth questioning, but they did it, and they maintain a pretty spotless record of safety. And they have air marshals on board as well to protect the citizens, which I think is also a fairly good idea, but something that each airline should decide for themselves. But ICE, I have anecdotal evidence myself of ICE harassing people in the Latino community. Recently, a friend of mine, Jeremy, brown belt, by the way, very good brown belt in the jiu-jitsu academy I go to, was harassed by ICE for being Filipino. He's American. He's an American citizen, but he was harassed, and they asked for his papers, which of course Nobody has. No American carries around their passport with them when they're driving around. But it seems that now Mexican Americans, people who have legal citizenship here, who are people of color, may have to carry around some form of identification because of this. This onerous practice of ICE, who originally were supposed to be going after the bad guys, meaning criminals who have committed acts of rape or violence against anyone. It doesn't have to be just an American citizen, but have now extended to workplace quotas. Now that they have a higher quota, they're now going to workplaces and schools and attempting to capture people who have been working here and living here for decades upon decades, who have committed no crime, who are just actually doing what every American does, trying to improve their lives. These people are now under the gun, which has forced Trump in his pragmatism to attempt now to exempt certain categories of immigrants from being deported, mainly in the agricultural and hospitality industries. Now, this isn't equality before the law. This is a rule of men, not the rule of laws. Number one, this is what scares me about that. But if it's not appropriate to take out these immigrants from hospitality and from farms, why is it appropriate to take them out of anywhere else? From Home Depot, where men are waiting outside to move people's furniture for cheap or to do construction for cheap. Why can't they then be exempted? They're not breaking the law. They're actually looking for work. They're not dealing drugs. They're not harming people. They're trying to make a living. So why this specific carve out, except for the fact that it's a politically connected group of folks that he wants to patronize? Right, farmers are a big group that he's been massively trying to put under the umbrella of political patronage, and now the hospitality industry is the same way. But lots of businesses will suffer from this, and individuals will suffer from this who hire quote unquote illegals to help them with work that they couldn't ordinarily afford, with all of the certification and burdens that are put on workers and contractors in America. I mean, what do you say about this? One, that they're harassing people, and two, that they're having special carve-outs.
Well, I actually spoke about this yesterday. One of my biggest critiques of Trump isn't just the bad policies, it's the inconsistency. Because people and businesses can adapt to bad policy, because then you know what to do and you know what the future holds. It sucks, but you can go through it. But with this guy, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off. Maybe we'll renegotiate. Maybe we won't. Ukraine's not getting weapons. Oh, we're going to give Ukraine some weapons. We don't want war with Iran. Well, hell with it. Let's bomb Iran. And you don't know what's coming next, or, what's going on. And this is a situation like that. We've got to get rid of all the immigrants. No, we're just going to get rid of the criminal immigrants. Well, what we need to do is create a path for the farmers. Well, why the farmers? Well, like you said, why are they special? And ultimately, it's not even the rule of men. It's the rule of man. One man and his whims, based on who he seemingly comes to talk to at a given time, or when he wakes up in the morning, you don't know. So it really disturbs me on so many levels. The immigration laws, to begin with, disturb me. The implementation of this policy disturbs me. Trump now trying to triangulate to please everybody disturbs me. Maybe I'm just disturbed. I don't know. That's also possible.
It's okay to be disturbed.
I suppose.
We're in slightly disturbing times. Even though this is the best time to be alive, we're in slightly disturbing times. So it's rational to be disturbed. I was going to say something, and now I forgot what it was, and you made me forget what it was.
How did I make you forget? I didn't make you forget anything.
Because I feel like saying you made me forget what it was. It had to do with Trump, though. It had to do with the rule by one man, carve-outs. Oh, shoot, I lost it again. You see, this is what happens when you become 60 years old. You get thoughts, and then you lose them. And maybe that's what's happening with Trump. Maybe he has a policy, it bubbles up in his brain, and he loses it temporarily, and then it comes back, and so maybe this is a geriatric thing and not just.
Or Biden. Did you see the thing I sent you about Biden? I sent that late because I saw it late on X.
I didn't see it.
I think Nicole Hingle sent it to me. Let me bust it out here. And what do I got going on here? I got distracted.
Oh,
Okay.
that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. It seems to me that the businesses he's exempting, like farmers and hospitality, that the standard for doing it is national interest. It seems right. There's a slightly fascistic vibe to the carve outs in that had it just been individuals like you or I who happen to have a housekeeper who may be illegal, or landscapers who happen to be illegal, or we allow contractors to build at our house or to make improvements on our house who are not legal or licensed necessarily, but do great work, and they can't afford the licensing fees, of course, and there's other obstacles that America puts in their way, but we can hire them because they're very proficient at what they do. Now, these people aren't exempt, even though they should be, but these wider industries, right, that I think Trump seems to think need to be self-sufficient for the country's interest, particularly agriculture. He's big on making agriculture self-sufficient, so we don't have to depend on any outside sources anymore for food exports. I think this is terrible and ridiculous and onerous. It puts an onerous burden on us and makes food far more expensive. It lowers our standard of living. But this is nonetheless his logic that there are some industries that need to be completely independent of any other country in case of some massive catastrophe like China attacking Taiwan and attempting to take over the world. We need to be independent. What do you say to that nonsense? I say it's nonsense. I shouldn't have editorialized it, but I just did.
Well, I think it's nonsense too. So, but I think that Trump, and if I've missed something in here, please tell me, because I was busy looking for the other thing that I wanted to read here.
In other words, not listening to me as usual.
I was partly listening. It's part. You can't just going out. The carve outs, I think, is what you're talking about. The arbitrary carve outs that Trump does. I do think it's not right. I think that we need freedom across the board, and then you don't have the government picking winners and losers. That's my ultimate thoughts on that. Now, if I missed some broader point you were making, I apologize, but I will say it is because you did not look at the last thing that I sent you, so I had to go and find it on my phone, and I couldn't do two things at once because I'm getting older myself.
I feel you, but you're way younger than me. So there's another article here by Axios that I found very interesting.
Well, hold on now. The whole point was I had a segue that I was given. We were talking about your memory, which was poor, and you said maybe Trump is suffering the same thing, and then I was going to segue to this. Then you remembered, and while I'm looking for this, you talked about the other thing. But I want to get to the memory thing first. Can we do that?
Wait, yeah, Scott is saying these men get a producer?
I wish we could.
Yes, we're currently looking for a producer, Scott. So soon.
Where are we looking? We are.
Yes, we're putting the word out right now over the lines. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel, folks, and also remember to what do you do?
Give us a producer.
Give us
share from YouTube. Share from YouTube. Okay, this is perfect because you forgot something else. Perfect segue. Okay. So this representative, James Comer, posts this to X today. He says, President Joe Biden's physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, just pled the fifth at his deposition before Congress today. It's now clear there was a conspiracy to cover up President Biden's cognitive decline after Kevin O'Connor, Biden's physician and family business associate, refused to answer any questions and chose to hide behind the Fifth Amendment. The American people demand transparency, but Dr. O'Connor would rather conceal the truth. Dr. O'Connor took the fifth when asked if he was told to lie about President Biden's health and whether he was fit to be president of the United States. So there's a few things here. One, it would not surprise me if this guy was told to lie on behalf of Biden. Clearly, people knew what was going on and covered it up. The problem I have, though, with the guy there, and this is something these people do when it's the other side, they took the fifth. That implies guilt. If we're going to assume that people are guilty because they take the fifth, that we're really undermining the constitutional structure, the Bill of Rights. because we're supposed to assume people are innocent until proven guilty. Now, I understand that's in the criminal law, but I'm talking about the I don't want to use the word spirit because I hate it. But the point I'm getting at here is it's perfectly within somebody's rights to take the fifth, and it's not necessarily evidence of some kind of complicity. I remember when Hillary took the fifth, or Hillary's guy took the fifth, and Trump said, nobody takes the fifth unless they're guilty, until he took the fifth. And I just wonder where James Comer was when Trump took the fifth. Was he saying the same things then? I doubt it, which gives you more reasons to just hate these politicians. All that said, I would like to find out about the cover-up, who knew what and when about former President Biden. I do think it's a travesty. They should have invoked, I think it's the 25th Amendment, and it got him out of there. He clearly wasn't fit to do the job. But that doesn't make it wrong or bad or indicate guilt to take the fifth.
Indeed, I agree with you. And since they were so hot after Trump to use the 25th Amendment to get him ousted from office, we had a real case of a man who was unfit to be the president of the United States, who really should have. They really should have used the 25th Amendment to get him out of there in the interests of the American people.
Who did you say?
Huh?
Who?
Who what?
Who was the president they should have used it on?
Biden.
Okay,
but but for almost the entire 4 years of Trump's first administration, they tried to use the 25th Amendment to oust him.
Okay,
as saying that he was unstable, which of course he is, and or neurotic or just unfit to be the president of the United States, which is questionable. But Biden truly was unfit to be the president of the United States, as we are discovering now, as I think anybody knew from the very beginning, he was mentally unfit. But we see now that the parties are so entrenched, all they are about are themselves. All they are about is remaining in power and controlling the levers of power. The ends justify the means. And guys like Biden, anybody within the party actually, is just a means to an end, a tool to get them where they want to get. It really has nothing to do with who's in there. They're all interchangeable as far as they're concerned. It looks like we have a social democrat bot on our feed talking shit, but I haven't really seen it all. He seems to be engaging with the other radical capitalists here on the chat. Remember to like and subscribe before we leave.
Yes. Yeah, it seems he's just criticizing Trump, Mark. I don't know if he's criticizing capitalism.
Okay. Well, he's a social democrat, so he's got to have problems with capitalism. But it's okay to criticize Trump because Trump is not a capitalist. In fact, he's probably more a social democrat than you are, Verite Snatch. I got to tell you. Hey, so we got to talk about tariffs, man.
All right, man.
Okay, let's talk about these tariffs. Now, of course, I don't know how we can really talk about the tariffs because they change from day to day, from week to week. 1 minute they're on, 1 minute they're off. Then we have month-long delays. Now, the conservatives have been spiking the football. If you ever watch Fox News, which I don't recommend you to do, but I do watch Fox News along with MSNBC and CNN. I try to get the full spectrum of bullshit that I can, because you got to know what the enemy is saying, and I consider now both sides to be the enemy at this point. I'm sorry, Ariana. That's my opinion. That's not necessarily the opinion of the American Capitalist Party, but I do think that they fill us.
Can I co-sign that opinion? I have the same opinion.
Okay, so this is Michael and Mark's opinion. Both sides are in cahoots with each other. They are more about preserving their own power than they are about preserving the Constitution of the United States and protecting the rights and liberties of the American people. And so Trump has been throwing out tariffs. Of course, he came out at first with 145% tariffs on China, then readjusted those. He saw after he started putting these onerous tariffs on friends and foes alike that this was potentially damaging to the economy. As the stock market dipped and lost like $6 trillion, he's like, whoops, maybe I did something wrong. And he started readjusting. But nonetheless, because these tariffs haven't completely come into full effect yet, The right is spiking the football, saying everybody said there was going to be a recession, all the economists out there, and it's not happening. And yet these tariffs are still going. Well, they're not going. They're still in process. That just leaves the business world very unclear and unsure as to what is happening next. But there has been, unbeknownst to some of the people on Fox News, a retraction. The first quarter had a 0.5% retraction. Now, that is the beginning signs of a recession. Employment, as much as they're bragging about 147,000 new jobs, we far outpace the expectations. Employment is now slowing down. This is also an indicator that there is a possible recession in the future. Now, Trump has got to get these tariffs straightened out. And now what the new deadline is, August 1st? Is that what it is? Yeah. All the deals he's making with 180 countries have turned into deals with what, 4 countries? Somewhere in there. But the deals are coming fast and furious, guys. They're coming fast and furious. The deals are coming fast and furious. Anyway, so the projections are really we won't feel the effects of these tariffs whenever they actually happen to land and we get a solid number as to what these tariffs are. We won't really know the effects of them for another year, probably. But already the companies that are really living on the margins, and you'll be surprised how many companies out there have very small profit margins. You'll be surprised. And these companies are the. You wouldn't be. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking about anybody.
You said you.
I did say you, but I was using the general you. I was mostly talking to Verite because he's a social democrat and probably thinks tariffs are great.
How do you know he's a social democrat?
He said he was a social democrat.
Oh, he did? I missed it.
I don't even know if it's a he. Yeah, he said they said they were a social democrat.
All right.
Which means they want state controls. They want state controls. They think the state is a great thing. They think holding guns to innocent people and taking their shit is super good. It leads to justice, folks. Well, that's what Trump is essentially doing. He's holding guns to people's heads and making us pay the bill for holding the guns at other people's heads. And there has been a rather large percentage of gross margins were decreasing. So decreased margins from 1% to 5%, that's 32% of businesses out there have experienced this. 6 to 10% decreases, 22% of executives and businesses have say this. More than 10%, 3% of the folks out there. Now, that's a fairly high percentage of people who are having their profit margins seriously reduced by the threat, even the threat of these tariffs going through. What do you say about this? I mean, the American Capitalist Party's solution to free trade is zero tariffs. That's right, zero tariffs. That means complete free trade, no imposition of the government upon exchanges between people. We think that is just and moral, and we also think that makes goods and services more accessible to everyone, including the people most affected by these kinds of laws, the poorest among us. What say you, Michael?
Real quick, Scott says that the stock market is up. I swear, Trump could go shoot up an elderly center, and you could bring that to Scott's attention. He would say, yes, but he did obey the speed limit while he was driving there. He's just one of these guys, like no matter what you say, comes a defense for Trump. Well, yeah, I mean, businesses are ultimately, they're losing their profit share. Their margins are getting smaller because part of their money is going to tariffs, which ultimately is the cost of production. It's factored in to, with their investments and what they plan and how they approach the future. So, they end up with a situation. Well, what do? They can either fire people or they can cut back production, raise prices. But they can only raise prices if there will be the demand for the product at the new price. Otherwise, they end up just going under. One thing that this article said, and I think this leads to a lot of confusion, and it also leads to a lot of the the experts were wrong, on the part of the Trumpers. And that's the claim that tariffs are going to cause inflation. Tariffs cannot cause inflation. Not if you mean by inflation a general rise in prices. In a simple mental experiment, we'll do this. Do a mental experiment whereby you hold the currency constant. There's no growth in money in the economy. If the price of one good goes up, then that has to take money from another product whose price will go down. So you wouldn't be able to have a general rise. The only thing that leads to a general rise in prices is if you have an increase in the money supply, which is why Milton Friedman said inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So what ends up happening is when people see that inflation is not in fact up, they say, look, it's not true. The tariffs don't cause inflation. But if you look at particular companies, as you just referenced, those companies' prices will be going up, and they will either go out of business, have to lay people off, whatever. Similar situation with minimum wage laws.
Yeah, indeed. Agreed with you 100%. But Akira Felix said something that is disturbing. He said, now Mark is mixing up presidents. Do you remember me mixing up presidents anywhere? I have to know what that means, Akira. Otherwise,
No. I don't think you did. But in Akira's defense, I might be wrong because I missed the president you were referencing, and I asked you what president you were referring to, and you said Biden. There's a lot going on in the chat here. I don't know. We've got an X-rated chat. I don't know how that happened. Sometimes it's very interesting to me, Mark, because the chat is like a show of its own, right? Like we're having a conversation and they'll end up in a discussion that has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I would read Akira Felix's, speaking of, little comment here, but it's disturbing. So I will not read it to the public. You're right. There is an entirely different chat going on here. Please remember to like and subscribe, folks, and to share on YouTube as you're talking X-rated talk and denigrating the quality of this show by doing so. Remember, we are radical capitalists and we want to make a good impression on the rest of the world. And this kind of discussion here, which I won't say out loud exactly what it is, but it's pretty blue. It's pretty risque here. This is not becoming a radical capitalist, I have to say.
But in radical capitalism, you're free to be risque.
You are indeed free to be risque. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to ban you from being risque. I enjoy it personally, but I'm an actor and I'm a dirty boy, so that's just me.
We do have our secretary here.
It's properly called secretary.
Yeah, Ariana Sneath, and she's using some language here in the chat. I think that maybe we should have her put a disclaimer that says this type of language is not necessarily language used by the American Capitalist Party. Although I have heard Mark use this word a few times.
Oh, okay. I'm sure I know what that word is. James Valiant said y'all started with Goth Whore and TSA junk groping. Okay, so it's both of our faults because you said the Goth Whore, I said junk groping.
No, you said Goth
I said
Whore.
Goth Horror,
but it came out as Goth Whore. You came out as Goth Whore.
No, okay. Only to the uninitiated, and only to somebody with a dirty mind like yourself.
I want to poll the audience. Does the audience prefer Goth Whores or Goth Horror?
Do not poll this audience. I have a feeling I know exactly which direction they're going to go.
Nothing like watching a good Goth Horror. It's nothing like watching a good Goth Horror while sitting next to a good Goth Whore. That's my vote.
Amen to that. I couldn't say it any better. Speaking of dirty boys, I want to talk about Musk a little bit because apparently Grok has been, and I didn't quite understand the point of this article, but apparently it's been putting anti-Semitic tropes in its responses, and even to some extent praising Hitler. Now, I haven't come across this in Grok, and I've been using Grok a lot more lately. Just as an experiment with AI. And I know you use it from time to time. You ask Grok questions, right?
I do.
Right. So
I actually asked Grok about this.
And what did Grok say about its anti-Semitism?
Before
we go on, is it getting the anti-Semitism because it's finding a lot of its information on social media, and social media is predominantly anti-Semitic right now?
I think so. There was
Okay.
actually previously, they put an AI system and told it to basically go out and study X and then come back and replicate what it learned. And the thing came back like a raving anti Semite. But one of the things that it said evidently is every damn time. I can't tell you how many times somebody said that to me in response to a comment. When I comment on somebody, somebody says every damn time. And what they mean is when they see my last name, Liebowitz, and they say a Jew every damn time. That's what it means. And
Oh,
evidently, Grok did
that's a
this.
dog whistle. That's like an anti-Semitic dog whistle now, every damn
Yeah.
time.
So I asked Grok about this morning, and Grok said, "No, I am trained not to be anti-Semitic, not to be, not to get involved in any of this." And then I asked, "Well, what about the stories that are out there?" And it said, "Oh, well, if you're referencing these stories, this and this and that, I don't have access." Basically, it said that it doesn't have access to other things that it has said. What was the answer? But regardless of what it
Strange.
is, yeah, I do think that it's getting it from X. I do think, I don't know for sure. I'm highly speculating because I really don't understand this stuff. But what I can't, well, let me push Grok to the side for a second. And let me just say that my experience on X, I've seen more anti Semitism in maybe the year and a half I've been on X than I previously saw in my entire life as a Jewish person.
Absolutely. It is rife with anti-Semitism. And I can tell
Yes.
you a couple places, that I think are the epicenters of anti-Semitism. The
Yeah.
UK and Ireland right now, utterly and totally and absolutely filled with anti-Semites. This is not a position of the American Capitalist Party. This is, however, my position and my
No,
personal
no,
experience
Scott.
with
Oh,
social
geez,
media.
Scott, we're not saying that people are more anti Semitic because of X. We're saying people are allowed to express their anti Semitism because of X. They have now a platform where they're able to do that. It's not that X is causing people to be anti Semitic.
Now, what do you think of that, Michael? I, of course, think it's better to see the evil than to not see the evil. What do you think? I mean, as horrible as it is, this could be a subterranean movement that nobody knew about. And I don't like threats that are under the surface and secret. I prefer threats out in the open where I can see them.
So let me think about it real quickly because I'm going to do what Donald Trump does with the swerve, right? Generally speaking, I normally think, yes, you're right. I like to know what's out there. However, if I owned X, I would not allow that.
Thank you.
I would.
Nor would I.
You understand? So while in
Yes.
general in society, I don't think the government should legislate against this stuff. I don't think it's ethical to platform these guys. I don't think it's ethical for big time podcast hosts to bring people on to spout bullshit without challenging them. If you want to bring them on and argue with them, challenge them, that's fine. But they bring them on there and let them put this shit out there. And so, X, you have this stuff all out there and they're able to get together. Speaking of the podcast, I was thinking about it this morning and I was thinking, you have Dave Smith, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owen, and they all love each other. And I'm thinking, well, what do they all have in common? Because they have different political views. And what they have in common is they are basically obsessed with Israel. Now, I'm somebody, I've told you, I don't support funding Israel. I don't support foreign aid, but I'm not obsessed with Israel. So simply being opposed to giving them money doesn't turn one into an obsessive. I'm just as opposed to giving anybody else money, right? But these folks are absolutely obsessed with Israel. And they just say,
two of them are certifiably insane. I mean, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have gone
yes,
off the. Dave, I think is a fame whore. I didn't say horror, a fame whore, and he's discovered what gets him clicks and what makes him famous is being controversial on this issue because now he's been on pretty much every major platform there is debating
and he's getting his buddies on.
And he's getting
Have
his
you
buddies
noticed?
on. No, I haven't noticed that. Like his comedian
Okay.
buddies?
No. So now
Scott Horton.
Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan have both had on Daryl Cooper.
Oh, that's right.
Now Scott
The
Horton
stupid
has
guy,
been on.
Churchill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Scott Horton has been on with Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan. I can't verify for sure that Dave got them on, but it seems likely to me that that's what happened. And these guys grow an audience. It's interesting that you talked about fame more, because I've actually had numerous conversations with people about this in regard to how I do my show or how I comment. And people have actually said, no, but you need to be willing to, maybe be a little hyperbolic. You get the audience, worry about the ethics later. And I say, fuck that. You know what I mean? I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to give you my ideas. If you don't like them, you don't have to listen. I'm fine with that. But I would much rather have people listen to me and be a small audience of people that actually want to engage truthfully with ideas than have an echo chamber that just has me telling them what they want to hear. I don't need that in my life. Some people don't mind it. That's what they like. That's what they want. It gives them money, fame, whatever. There's
Well,
things in life more important.
I think Jesus said something about this, and I will paraphrase it. I know it's unusual for an
No,
atheist
it's
to
a
quote
beautiful quote, and Leonard Peikoff actually uses it in Objectivism, the
what
philosophy of
profited
non-man.
what profiteth a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul. So yes,
Yes.
there is no such thing for all of our listeners out there as ethics come later. Ethics come now, and if you put them if you evade them or push them off in order to gain profit, they will be profits that will in some way curse you in the end. I have to tell you, you will. The more you give up your ethics and principles, the easier it becomes, and the harder it becomes to regain them. It's not easy living a rational and principled life, because you have to stand against a lot of obstruction. You have to stand against a lot of pushback, but you are better off for that. And what you will always get from Michael and I is our integrity. You will always get our perfectly honest opinion. And sometimes you will even see me change Michael, which happens more often than not. I change his opinion on a plethora of issues. And sometimes, every once in a while, just like once in like every 50 years, you'll see him change me on an opinion that I've been holding. But it's usually the other way around. I just want you to know. I'm kidding. Of course, I think you've changed me more than I've changed you. But the fact is, we're open to change because truth is our goal, not being right, not holding on to a perspective that's wrong, but holding on to the truth. And that, I think, is an American Capitalist Party goal as well. It's the truth that is our standard. It is the truth. I just wanted to say one quick thing before we get on to the capitalist law today, which I believe is my responsibility today.
Yeah, I think so.
We had an interesting event with Benjamin Netanyahu at a state dinner with President Trump, where he presented to him, at first, I think their first visit, he presented to him a golden pager, which I thought was sort of funny. I have to admit, I thought that was sort of funny. This time he presented to him a letter that he presented to the Nobel Committee, recommending President Trump to the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I think that's sort of like the devil presenting God with a pardon for President Trump. I think the country that probably has the least influence in the Nobel and for the Nobel Peace Prize is Israel, and not for any good reason, just because the world seems to be anti-Semitic and buying a narrative right now that makes them the bad guy. But the gesture itself, I think, I gotta say, it bothers me, just like it bothers me with the European community calling him daddy. I get the sense, maybe I'm cynical, but I feel like none of them actually believe this to be true, but they know they want to flatter him, and they know that this is the way to get on his good side. And Trump is superficial enough and narcissistic enough to believe it.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We have a president who's so easily moved. All you got to say is, I like you. You're awesome. You're the smartest man on the planet, and you can get pretty much anything you want from the guy. So look, folks, my capitalist thought for the day, I think it should reflect some of the stuff that we've been talking about today. Hold on. Let me call some of this stuff up. Yeah. So look, In a capitalist society, you are a free agent. You are a sovereign. What does it mean to be a sovereign? The libertarians say you own your own life. You don't technically own your own life. You're not a piece of property. It's not something that you can, sell to somebody. You're a sovereign, which means you are a rational being with free will. You are an end unto yourself. And a capitalist party recognizes that fact, that natural fact of human life, by supplying a system of rights, which are claims and protections, claims to the stuff that you've worked for, claims to being free from physical force and the initiation of force from others, so that you are free to live and act on your own values. This, to me, is a utopia. This is the utopia that we should strive for. That doesn't end in, of course, perfect outcomes for everybody. You won't always get what you want, but you will always have the possibility to fulfill your potential, because you are a free agent and you will be in total control of the things which you can control in your life and your relationships. That is the kind of society that capitalism endorses. A free society of free agents exchanging with each other to mutual benefit. There is no zero-sum game in capitalism. It is a win-win relationship with your fellow man. And that's why it happens to be the most benevolent society on the face of the earth, and the most benevolent society that has ever been produced in civilization. So that is my capitalist thought for the day. Folks, you're going to see us here tomorrow, same bat time, same bat place, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Remember to like and subscribe, and remember to share on Facebook before you leave. Even if you don't like it, just say it, put it out there. The algorithm likes your opinions, so make sure you express them fully. And I also want you to remember, you've got 24 hours between now and then. What do you want to say?
I wanted to say also, these comments don't show up on YouTube. It would be very helpful if you would go and leave a comment on YouTube. Something brief, just a comment. It helps with the algorithm.
Yeah, thank you, folks. Bring some of this comment to YouTube. That would be fantastic. Maybe some of the more racy stuff you can leave behind, or not. Maybe people like racy stuff. You could put it on there. What the heck? Whatever it is that improves the algorithm so we can get this message out to more people, the better. You have 24 hours, folks, to check your premises, and I want you to do that. Remember, check your premises, and we will see you here bright and early tomorrow. Peace.